The sun was setting when they found her. An elderly woman collapsed on her knees in the middle of Pinewood Road, barefoot, her feet covered in blood and dirt. In her trembling hands, she clutched a worn cloth bag, like it held her very last breath. "I just wanted to give him this," she whispered through tears, pulling out a simple notebook with yellow daisies on the cover. "It's his birthday. I'm his mama, and he forgot me." But what nobody knew, what would break an entire community's heart, was the 6-mile journey she'd walked on those bleeding feet, the coins she'd saved by starving herself, the shoes she'd sold just to afford one small gift, and the 3 children who'd abandoned her, now racing desperately to reach her before it was too late. What she carried in that bag would expose the cruelest truth about love, sacrifice, and the price of being forgotten. The sun beat down on that old country road like it had a personal grudge against anyone crazy enough to walk it at noon. And there she was, Martha Hayes, 73 years young, walking barefoot on asphalt so hot you could fry an egg on it. Her feet, oh Lord, her feet were already turning red, each step leaving a little moisture print that dried up before you could even blink. The cloth bag she carried, worn thin from years of use, hung from her shoulder, and she clutched it to her chest like it held the crown jewels or something. But it wasn't jewels in that bag. No, sir. The crickets hummed their summer song, and somewhere far off a rooster crowed even though morning had long passed. The wind picked up the dust from the road, and it clung to her sweaty skin, mixing with the tears she kept wiping away with the back of her hand. "Just a little further," she whispered to herself, her voice cracking. "Just a little further, Martha, you've come this far." Her bare feet found every sharp pebble, every crack in the road, but she didn't stop, couldn't stop, because in that simple cloth bag was something that mattered more than her own comfort, more than her burning feet, more than the shame of being seen like this, barefoot and struggling like she didn't have a soul in the world who cared. The thing is, she didn't. Not really, not anymore. Her children, 3 of them, all grown, all busy with their own lives, they'd forgotten what day it was, forgotten what it meant. But Martha, she remembered everything, every single year, every single moment. As she walked, her mind drifted back to younger days when her hands were smooth and her back didn't ache with every movement. Back when she'd wake up before dawn to knead bread dough, her fingers working the flour and water into something that would feed her babies. Those same hands had picked beans in the field under this same merciless sun, had mended clothes by candlelight, had wiped away her children's tears when they fell and scraped their knees. Now those hands trembled as they held onto that bag. A car passed by, kicking up more dust. The driver didn't even slow down, didn't see her or maybe saw her and didn't care. That's how it was these days. People in such a hurry they couldn't see the pain right in front of them. Martha's throat felt dry as sandpaper, but she swallowed hard and kept going. The road stretched ahead, shimmering in the heat, and for a moment, just a moment, she wondered if she'd even make it. But then she touched the bag again, felt what was inside, and she knew she had to make it, because what she carried wasn't just a gift. It was a piece of her heart, wrapped up in sacrifice and love, meant for someone who'd forgotten she even existed. And what she was about to discover when she finally reached that door, well, that was going to change everything. Martha looked down at her hands as she walked, and Lord, what stories those hands could tell. The calluses on her palms were thick as leather, earned from decades of work that never seemed to end. Her nails were cut short, practical, no fancy manicures or polish, just plain working hands. Hands weathered by the sun and rough from the soil, but they were still steady, still strong. As her fingers brushed against the cloth bag, memories flooded back, like a river breaking through a dam. She could almost smell the yeast and flour from all those mornings she'd woken up at 4 a.m. to knead bread dough. Her hands would work the mixture, push, fold, turn, over and over until it was just right. "Mama, can I help?" little Tommy would ask, standing on a wooden crate beside her, his tiny hands covered in flour. "Sure, baby," she'd say, guiding his small fingers through the dough. "Gotta be gentle but firm, you hear?" Tommy, her youngest, the one whose birthday it was today, 38 years old now, and he didn't even remember his own mama anymore, too busy with his life in the city, too caught up to pick up the phone. Martha blinked hard, pushing the hurt down deep. Her mind drifted further back, to the bean fields where she'd spent entire summers picking under the blazing sun. Her hands would move so fast, filling basket after basket, her back aching, her skin burning, but she never complained, not once, because every bean meant food on the table, meant her babies wouldn't go to bed hungry. Then there were the nights. Oh, those long nights, sitting by the dim lamp, mending torn clothes. Her hands would guide the needle through fabric, patching up holes in Tommy's jeans, fixing the sleeve on Sarah's favorite shirt, sewing buttons back onto Michael's school uniform. "Mama, you don't gotta do that," Michael had said once, watching her work past midnight. "I can just wear it torn." "No child of mine's gonna walk around in rags," she'd replied, her hands never stopping. "You're gonna look decent even if it kills me." Now, as Martha's bare feet found another sharp stone, she winced but kept moving. Her hand tightened around the bag, that worn cloth bag that had been with her for 20 years, carrying groceries, carrying laundry, carrying hope. Inside was something simple, a notebook with a floral cover, yellow daisies on a blue background and a black pen. She'd bought it 3 days ago at the little store in town, spending the coins she'd been saving for months. Coins she'd hidden in a jar behind the flour canister, coins she'd saved by going without salt for her food, without flour for her bread, without the medicine that would have eased the pain in her joints. But it didn't matter. None of that mattered, because Tommy used to love to draw, to write little stories when he was young. And even though he was grown now, even though he'd forgotten her, she remembered. She remembered everything. The gift was small, sure, but it carried the weight of every sacrifice she'd ever made, every meal she'd skipped so her kids could eat, every tear she'd cried in silence so they wouldn't see her break. Her hands, these old, weathered, faithful hands, gripped that bag like it was her whole life wrapped up in fabric. And the truth about why she was really making this journey, that was something even her own heart could barely admit. The birds sang their evening song as Martha kept walking, her breathing heavy now, mixing with the chirping from the trees. Outside, the world was full of sound, crickets, birds, the rustle of leaves in the warm breeze. But inside her heart, there was only silence, the kind of silence that screams louder than any noise, the silence of a phone that never rings, the silence of birthdays that come and go without a single "Happy birthday, Mama," the silence of children who've closed the door on their own mother, not with a slam but with something worse, forgetfulness. It had been 3 months since Sarah called, 3 whole months, and when she did call, it was quick, rushed. "Hey, Mama, I'm good, real busy with work. Talk to you later, okay?" Later never came. Michael, he'd sent a text message 2 weeks ago, just 5 words. "Hope you're doing okay, Mom." 5 words. That's all she was worth to him now. And Tommy, her baby, her youngest, she hadn't heard his voice in nearly 6 months. 6 months of wondering if he was eating right, if he was happy, if he even thought about her at all. As Martha walked past the Henderson place, she could see through their lit-up windows. The whole family gathered around the dinner table, Grandma at the head, kids laughing, someone passing the potatoes. The warm glow spilled out onto their front porch, and she could almost hear the joy from the road. She didn't stop, didn't even slow down, just kept her eyes forward even though her heart ached something fierce. A little further down, the Morrison house had their porch lights on. Old Mr. Morrison sat in his rocking chair with his daughter beside him, both of them drinking sweet tea and talking about who knows what. His daughter visited every single evening, every single one. Martha's throat tightened. She used to dream about that, about her kids coming by for supper, about grandkids running around her little house, about being surrounded by the family she'd given everything for. But dreams are funny things. Sometimes they die quiet, without you even noticing until they're already gone. Her feet burned worse now, and she could feel blisters forming on her heels. But physical pain, that was nothing compared to the weight she carried in her chest, the weight of being forgotten. See, the thing about being a mother is you never forget. You remember every birthday, every scraped knee you bandaged, every fever you stayed up all night worrying over. You remember their first words, their first steps, the way they used to run to you when they were scared. You remember everything. But your kids, they grow up and they forget. They forget how you went without so they could have. They forget the sacrifices, the sleepless nights, the dreams you buried so theirs could fly. They forget you even exist. Martha wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, but the tears kept coming, not sobs. She was too tired for sobs, just silent tears rolling down her weathered cheeks, mixing with the dust on her face. But here's the thing that nobody knew, the thing that kept her moving forward on those burning feet. Her heart wasn't empty, not completely, because she remembered. She remembered that today, this very day, was Tommy's 38th birthday. And even if the whole world forgot, even if Tommy himself forgot, even if his brother and sister forgot, Martha remembered. She remembered everything. And that notebook in her bag, That simple gift she'd sacrificed for. That was proof that a mother's love doesn't fade, doesn't forget, doesn't give up. But what she didn't know was that someone had been watching her journey, and what they were about to do would turn everything upside down. Martha's mind drifted back to Tommy's 5th birthday. Oh, how she could see it clear as yesterday. They'd had nothing back then. Her husband had just left, walked out without a word, without a dime, leaving her with 3 kids and an empty cupboard. But it was Tommy's birthday, and she'd be darned if that little boy would go to bed without knowing his day mattered. She remembered standing in that tiny kitchen, staring at what little she had. No money for a store-bought cake, no sugar for frosting, nothing but cornmeal, a bit of milk, and pure determination. "Mama, are we having cake?" 5-year-old Tommy had asked, his eyes so hopeful it nearly broke her. "You bet we are, baby," she'd said, forcing a smile. "The best cake you ever had," and she'd made it work. Lord knows how, but she did. She'd mixed that cornmeal with what she had, baked it over the old stove, and when it came out, golden and warm, she'd stuck candles in it. Not real candles, no sir. She'd dried out corn cobs, wrapped them in bits of cloth soaked in cooking oil, and those became his candles. Makeshift, sure. But when Tommy saw that cake with those flickering lights, his whole face lit up brighter than any candle ever could. "Make a wish, sweetheart," she'd whispered, holding back tears. He'd closed his eyes tight, scrunched up his little face, and blown out every single one. "What did you wish for?" Sarah had asked, jealous she wasn't the birthday girl. "Can't tell," Tommy had said, grinning with missing front teeth, "or it won't come true." But later that night, when she'd tucked him in, he'd whispered it to her anyway. "I wished that you'd never be sad again, Mama." The memory hit Martha so hard, she had to stop walking for a moment. Her hand went to her chest, trying to hold in the pain that threatened to spill out. That little boy who'd wished for her happiness. Where was he now? Too busy to call his own mama. Too caught up in his life to remember the woman who'd made cakes out of nothing, who'd turned poverty into magic. Just to see him smile. She looked down at the cloth bag again. The notebook and pen inside suddenly felt heavier than ever, because here she was, 33 years later, still trying to make his birthday special, still trying to show him he mattered, even when she had nothing to give. The past 2 weeks had been rough. Her cabinet at home was nearly bare, just a bit of rice and some old tea bags. She'd sold her late mother's silver bracelet, the only valuable thing she owned, just to scrape together enough for this gift and the bus fare she'd need for the way back. But when she'd gotten to the bus stop this morning, clutching her coins, the driver had told her the fare had gone up. 50 cents more. 50 cents she didn't have, so she'd started walking. Barefoot, because she'd sold her only good pair of shoes last month to pay the electric bill. 6 miles. That's how far Tommy's house was from hers. 6 miles of hot asphalt, sharp stones, and burning feet. But what else could she do? Let his birthday pass unmarked? Let him think nobody cared? No, even if he'd forgotten, even if nobody else remembered, she would make sure this day didn't disappear into nothing. Because that's what mothers do. They remember when everyone else forgets. They give when they have nothing left. They love even when that love isn't returned. Martha wiped her eyes and started walking again, each step a prayer, each movement an act of love. But what she couldn't see was the storm brewing ahead, a revelation that would shake everything she thought she knew. 3 days ago, Martha had stood in her small kitchen, staring at that old jar hidden behind the flour canister. Her hands had trembled as she counted the coins, one by one slowly, making sure she had enough, $47.35. It had taken her 4 months to save that much. 4 months of going without things most folks don't even think twice about. No salt for her food. Everything she ate tasted like cardboard, but she'd gotten used to it. Salt cost money, and every penny counted. No flour either. The canister that hid her jar, empty as her stomach most nights. She'd gone without bread, without biscuits, without the simple comfort of something homemade and warm. Her arthritis medication. She'd stopped taking it 2 months back. The pain in her joints had gotten so bad some mornings she could barely get out of bed. But that prescription cost $30 a month, and $30 could go toward Tommy's gift instead. So she'd endured, gritted her teeth through the pain, soaked her swollen hands in warm water when it got too bad, and kept saving. Every coin had a story. The quarter she'd found in the church parking lot after Sunday service, the dollar bill Mrs. Chen from down the road had given her for helping carry groceries, the loose change she'd collected from returning bottles and cans, walking miles to the redemption center even when her feet screamed in protest. On Monday morning, she'd finally had enough. She'd walked into Miller's General Store, the only store in their small town, with her jar of coins wrapped in a cloth napkin. Old Mr. Miller had looked at her with those pitying eyes she'd grown to hate. "Martha Hayes," he'd said, shaking his head, "you don't need to be spending money on—" "It's my grandson's birthday." She'd cut him off, her voice firm despite the shame burning in her chest. "I need a gift." She'd walked past the toy section, too expensive, past the candy, too temporary, past everything that sparkled and shined, but meant nothing in the long run. And then she'd seen it. On a bottom shelf covered in a thin layer of dust, like nobody had looked at it in months. A notebook with a floral cover, yellow daisies on a blue background, simple but beautiful. Next to it, a black pen, $12.99 for both. Her heart had nearly stopped. She could afford it barely, but she could. "This one," she'd said, bringing it to the counter. Mr. Miller had rung it up slowly, like he was giving her time to change her mind. "Martha, you sure about this? That's a lot of money for you." "It's perfect," she'd whispered, counting out the exact change with her weathered fingers, because it was perfect. Tommy used to love writing stories when he was little. He'd fill up notebook after notebook with his messy handwriting, creating worlds and adventures that made her heart swell with pride. "Mama, when I grow up, I'm going to write a book," he'd told her once, "and I'm going to put your name in it, dedicated to my mama, who believed in me." That dream had died somewhere along the way. Life got in the way, bills got in the way, and Tommy had stopped writing. But maybe, just maybe, this simple notebook could remind him of who he used to be. To anyone else, it was just paper and a pen, ordinary, cheap even. But to Martha, it was hope wrapped in blue and yellow. It was a key to unlock the future Tommy had forgotten he wanted. It was everything she couldn't say out loud. "I still believe in you, I still remember your dreams, I still love you even when you've forgotten me." And nobody, not a single soul, could imagine the true value hidden in such an ordinary gift. The sun was starting to dip lower now, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, but Martha barely noticed. Her eyes were fixed on the road ahead, on the path she had to finish. Every step sent sharp pain shooting through her feet. The stones on the road weren't just rough anymore. They were cutting into her skin, leaving little traces of blood on the hot asphalt. But she pressed on. What choice did she have? Sweat poured down her face, stinging her eyes, dripping off her chin. Her old cotton dress clung to her back, damp and heavy. She lifted her eyes to the sky. Vast, blue, nearly cloudless, except for a few wisps of white drifting by. "Lord," she whispered, her voice cracking, "give me strength, just a little more strength." To her right, a pasture stretched out green and peaceful. Cows grazed lazily, swishing their tails at flies, not a care in the world. They didn't know about pain, about being forgotten, about walking 6 miles on bleeding feet just to prove you still loved someone. Martha envied them for a moment. What would it be like to just exist, to not carry this weight of love and loss and longing? She passed an old broken-down wagon near a fence, its wooden wheels cracked and useless, weeds growing up through the floorboards. Abandoned, forgotten, left to rot under the sun. Just like me, she thought, then immediately pushed the thought away. No, she wasn't broken down. Not yet. Not while she still had breath in her lungs and love in her heart. A dog appeared from somewhere, a scruffy brown mutt with kind eyes. It trotted up beside her, matching her slow pace for a few steps, tongue hanging out. "Hey there, boy," Martha said softly, grateful for the company, however brief. The dog looked up at her, tilted its head like it understood her pain, then licked her hand. For just a moment, Martha felt less alone. But then the dog spotted a rabbit in the distance and took off running, disappearing into the field. And just like that, she was alone again. Everything around her seemed to echo that loneliness. The empty road stretching on forever, the cows that didn't even look her way, the abandoned wagon slowly falling apart, even the dog that left her behind. Her whole life felt like this road, long, painful, with nobody walking beside her. But Martha Hayes had learned something over 73 years of living. Courage isn't about not being scared or not being hurt. Courage is about keeping going, even when every part of you wants to stop. She clutched the cloth bag tighter to her chest, feeling the notebook inside. That simple gift was her courage made physical, proof that love doesn't quit, even when it's not returned. Her feet screamed with every step. Her heart ached with every beat. But she kept moving forward. 3 more miles to go, 3 more miles until she could look Tommy in the eyes and say, "Happy birthday, baby. Your mama didn't forget. What Martha didn't know, couldn't know, was that about 50 yards behind her someone had started following her, someone who'd been sitting on their porch and noticed this elderly woman walking barefoot down the road, bleeding and struggling but refusing to stop, someone curious enough to wonder where she was going, someone who was about to change everything. And when they finally caught up to her, the truth they'd discover would break their heart wide open. Martha was so focused on putting one foot in front of the other that she didn't hear the footsteps behind her at first, didn't notice the small figure watching her from the edge of the road. It was a child, maybe 8 or 9 years old, who'd been playing with a toy truck in the dirt driveway of a small house. The girl had looked up just in time to see this elderly woman limping past, barefoot and bleeding, clutching a worn cloth bag like her life depended on it. At first, the child just stared. Then curiosity got the better of her. She set down her truck and started following, keeping a little distance at first, not wanting to scare the old lady. But the more she watched, the more her heart hurt for this stranger. The woman's feet were bruised purple and red, cut up and bleeding. She walked like every step was agony, but she didn't stop, didn't even slow down. And the way she held that bag, pressed tight against her chest, it was like she was carrying something more precious than gold. The child moved closer, her little legs working to match the woman's painful pace. "Mom," she called out softly. Martha's head turned slowly, surprised to see a young girl with concerned brown eyes and pigtails falling out of their ribbons. "Yes, sweetheart." Martha's voice was gentle despite her exhaustion. The girl pointed at Martha's feet. "You're hurt. You're bleeding real bad." Martha glanced down at her feet, almost like she'd forgotten about the pain. "I know, honey, but I'm okay." "Where are you going?" the child asked, moving even closer now. "Why are you walking without shoes?" Martha stopped for just a moment, looking at this innocent child whose eyes held nothing but genuine concern. When was the last time someone had looked at her like that, like she mattered? She managed a small smile, tears threatening to spill over. "I'm going to my son's house." "Is it far?" "About 3 more miles." The girl's eyes went wide. 3 miles? Like this? She gestured at Martha's feet again. "I don't have a choice, baby. It's his birthday and I've got to get this to him." Martha touched the cloth bag softly. "What's in there?" the child asked, her curiosity as pure as morning dew. Martha looked at the bag, then back at the girl. How could she explain? How could she put into words what this simple gift meant? "I'm going to deliver a piece of my heart," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. The child tilted her head, processing those words. "A piece of your heart? That's right, sweetheart. Sometimes love looks like a long walk on sore feet. Sometimes it looks like a simple gift that cost everything you had. And sometimes," her voice cracked, "sometimes it looks like remembering someone who's forgotten all about you." The girl's eyes filled with tears. She didn't quite understand. There was something in this old woman's words that touched a place deep inside her, something that felt important and true and desperately sad all at once. "Can I walk with you?" the child asked suddenly. Martha's heart swelled. "Don't you need to get home? Won't your mama worry?" "I'll tell her I'm helping somebody," the girl said firmly. "She always says we should help people who need it." Martha wanted to say no, wanted to tell her to go home where it was safe and comfortable. But the truth was she was so tired, so alone, and this child's company felt like a gift from heaven itself. "Okay," Martha whispered, "just for a little while." And so they walked together, the old woman with bleeding feet and a broken heart, and the young girl with pigtails and pure compassion. What neither of them knew was that this innocent reply, "I'm going to deliver a piece of my heart," would echo far beyond what Martha could ever imagine, setting off a chain of events that would shake an entire community. The little girl walked with Martha for about half a mile before her mama called her home for supper. But as she ran back toward her house, she couldn't stop thinking about that old woman and those heartbreaking words, "I'm going to deliver a piece of my heart." She burst through her front door, breathless and upset. Mama, there's a lady walking barefoot down the road and her feet are all bloody, and she said she's delivering a piece of her heart to her son." Her mother, Mrs. Rodriguez, looked up from the stove, wooden spoon in hand. "What are you talking about, Lily?" "An old lady, Mama. She's walking to her son's house 3 miles, and she doesn't have any shoes and she's hurting so bad, but she kept going, 'cause it's his birthday and he forgot and—" The words tumbled out so fast she could barely breathe. Mrs. Rodriguez's face shifted from confusion to concern. She wiped her hands on her apron and stepped out onto the porch, looking down the road. Sure enough, in the distance, she could see the figure of an elderly woman limping along. "Sweet Jesus," she whispered. Within an hour, word had spread like wildfire through their small town. Mrs. Rodriguez had called her sister. Her sister had called their neighbor. The neighbor had mentioned it at Miller's general store while picking up milk, and that's when Mr. Miller spoke up. "I know who that is," he said quietly. "That's Martha Hayes. Came in here 3 days ago and bought a notebook and pen with a jar full of coins. Said it was for her grandson's birthday." "Grandson?" someone asked. "Tommy?" Mr. Miller said. "Tommy Hayes. Lives about 6 miles out on Pinewood Road." The name hit like lightning, Tommy Hayes. Everyone knew Tommy. Successful guy, worked in the city, drove a nice car, came through town maybe twice a year. "Wait," Mrs. Chen spoke up, her face going pale. "Today's his birthday?" "Must be," Mr. Miller confirmed. The whispers grew louder. How could he forget his own mama? How could he let her walk 6 miles barefoot just to bring him a gift? Someone called Sarah, Tommy's older sister. She was 2 towns over at work. "Sarah, it's Martha Chen. Do you know what day it is?" "Tuesday?" Sarah answered, confused. "It's your brother Tommy's birthday, and your mama is walking barefoot with bleeding feet, all the way to his house to deliver a gift because y'all forgot." The phone nearly slipped from Sarah's hand. "What? No, that can't be." "It's true. Multiple people have seen her on the road. She's been walking for hours." Sarah's stomach dropped. Oh God, what had they done? She immediately called Michael, her other brother. "Michael, we forgot Tommy's birthday and Mama's." "I know." Michael cut her off, his voice thick with emotion. "Someone just called me too. I'm heading there now." Sarah grabbed her keys with shaking hands, guilt crushing her chest like a weight she couldn't lift. How could she have forgotten? How could they all have forgotten? Michael was already in his truck calling Tommy. "What?" Tommy answered, distracted. "It's your birthday, you fool. And Mama's walking to your house right now, barefoot and bleeding, to bring you a gift." There was silence on the other end. Complete, devastating silence. "What?" Tommy's voice came out strangled. "She remembered, Tommy. She's the only one who remembered, and she's suffering to prove she still loves you." Tommy's world tilted. His mama who he hadn't called in 6 months. His mama who he'd stopped thinking about because life got busy and he got comfortable. His mama was walking 6 miles on bare, bleeding feet because she loved him. How could any of them face the shame and guilt when the truth came to light? How could they look her in the eyes knowing they'd abandoned the one person who'd never abandoned them? By the time Martha reached the edge of Pinewood Road, the sun was setting in earnest, painting everything in shades of gold and crimson. Her feet had gone numb. She couldn't tell if that was a blessing or a warning. Every part of her body screamed for rest, but she was so close now. Just a few more steps. Tommy's house came into view, a nice 2-story with a neat lawn and a porch light already glowing. A house that comfort built, a house her sacrifice had helped make possible. But as she approached, she noticed something strange. There were cars in the driveway, multiple cars, and people on the porch. Her heart seized. Had she gotten the day wrong? Was there a gathering she didn't know about? Then she saw him, Tommy, standing on the front steps, his face pale as moonlight, his eyes red and swollen, and beside him, Sarah and Michael, all 3 of her children together. Martha stopped walking, confusion washing over her exhausted mind. What's going on? Tommy moved first. He came down those porch steps like his feet were on fire, and when he reached his mama, he dropped to his knees right there in the dirt. "Mama!" he choked out, tears streaming down his face. "Mama, what have you done?" Martha looked down at her baby boy, her 38-year-old baby boy, kneeling at her feet, and she didn't understand. "It's your birthday, sweetheart. I brought you something." "You walked," Sarah's voice came from behind, breaking on the word. "You walked 6 miles barefoot to bring him a gift." "We forgot," Michael added, his voice raw with shame. "We all forgot, and you— God, Mama, look at your feet." Martha glanced down. In the porch light, she could see clearly now. Blood, bruises, cuts, swelling. They looked like they belonged to someone who'd been through a war. "They're fine," she said automatically, the same way she'd dismissed her own pain her whole life. "I just needed to— I have something for you, Tommy." With trembling hands, she held out the cloth bag, that worn, faithful bag that had carried so much more than a simple gift. Tommy took it like it weighed 1,000 pounds. His hands shook as he reached inside and pulled out the notebook, yellow daisies on blue, and the black pen. For a moment, he just stared at it. Then recognition hit him like a freight train. "You remembered," he whispered. "I used to write stories. I used to fill notebooks, and you'd You'd saved them all in a box under your bed. I still have that box, Martha said softly. Every single story you ever wrote. Tommy broke, just completely shattered. He clutched that notebook to his chest and sobbed. Deep, wrenching sobs that came from a place of unbearable shame and profound love all mixed together. Sarah and Michael rushed forward, wrapping their arms around their mama, their own tears falling freely. "We're sorry," Sarah wept against Martha's shoulder. "Mama, we're so sorry." "We forgot you," Michael's voice cracked. "We forgot the woman who never forgot us." Martha stood there, held by her children, feeling their regret and pain and love pouring out after years of silence. Her own tears came then, not tears of pain, but of something else, something that felt like release. "I know you got busy," she said quietly. "I know life gets in the way." "That's no excuse," Tommy said, still on his knees, still holding that notebook like a lifeline. "There's no excuse for what we did, for how we abandoned you." Martha looked at her 3 children, these people she'd given everything for, these people who'd forgotten her but who were here now, broken and sorry and real. Could she forgive them? Could she find it in her heart to let go of the months of silence, the birthdays they'd missed, the loneliness that had nearly crushed her? She looked at the notebook in Tommy's hands, that simple gift that had cost her everything but meant even more. And she knew the answer, but what she said next would either heal this family forever or break it beyond repair. Martha looked at her 3 children, their faces wet with tears, their hearts broken open with remorse, and she felt something shift inside her chest. "I forgive you," she said simply. "I've always forgiven you." Those 4 words broke the dam completely. Tommy pulled his mama into his arms, holding her like he'd never let go again. Sarah and Michael joined in, and for the first time in years they were a family again. Imperfect, broken, but together. "Come inside, Mama," Tommy said, wiping his eyes. "Let us take care of you." But Martha barely made it up the porch steps before her legs gave out. The adrenaline that had carried her 6 miles finally abandoned her, and she collapsed. "Mama!" All 3 children caught her, carrying her gently inside. They cleaned her wounds with warm water and bandages, their hands shaking as they saw the full extent of what she'd endured. Every cut, every bruise, every blister was a testimony to a love they'd taken for granted. While they tended to her feet, Sarah made calls. Within 30 minutes, something extraordinary began to happen. Mrs. Rodriguez arrived with Lily, bringing homemade tamales. "For the birthday boy," she said, "and for the strongest woman I've ever heard of, Mr. Miller came with a cake from the bakery. Mrs. Chen brought flowers from her garden. The Hendersons, the Morrisons, families Martha had only passed by on her painful walk, they all came, one by one. Word had spread through the entire community about Martha's journey, and now they were here to honor it. By 8 o'clock, Tommy's modest home was overflowing with people. But this wasn't just Tommy's celebration anymore. "Listen up, everyone," Michael called out, standing beside his mother. "Today was supposed to be my brother's birthday, but we forgot. We all forgot. The only person who remembered was the woman we'd abandoned, our mama, who walked 6 miles barefoot just to deliver a gift of love." His voice broke. "So tonight, we're not just celebrating Tommy, we're celebrating her, the root of our family, the heart we forgot was beating." They brought out a chair, Tommy's best armchair, and placed it in the center of the living room. They adorned it with wildflowers that Sarah had quickly gathered from the yard, daisies just like the ones on the notebook. "Mama," Tommy said, his voice thick with emotion, "please, sit here. Let us honor you the way you've always honored us." Martha sat, overwhelmed as her children lifted her bandaged feet onto a cushioned stool. Around her, the community gathered, strangers who'd become witnesses to the greatest love story they'd ever seen. Outside, neighbors began lighting lanterns along Pinewood Road. One by one, small lights flickered to life, illuminating the path Martha had walked in pain. "From now on," Sarah announced, her arm around her mama's shoulders, "this road will be known as Martha's Way, so everyone remembers that love doesn't quit, even when it's forgotten." Through the window, Martha could see it, that long, painful road now glowing with light. The path of her suffering transformed into something beautiful. Tommy knelt beside her chair, still holding that notebook. "Mama, you gave me this so I could write my future. But the truth is, you already wrote the most important story. You wrote it with every sacrifice, every prayer, every step on bleeding feet. And we're going to spend the rest of our lives trying to be worthy of it." Martha's tears fell freely now, but they were different. Not tears of pain or loneliness, but tears of healing. "I love you," she whispered. "I've always loved you. I always will." The room erupted in applause, in tears, in the sound of a family being reborn, and what began as a lonely walk, a desperate journey of a forgotten mother, turned into a procession of love that transformed an entire community. Now listen here, friend. Martha's story isn't just about one forgotten mother. It's about every person sacrificing in silence while we're too busy to notice. Here's what should shake you. How many Marthas are in your life right now? Your mama, that grandparent, that friend who's always there? When's the last time you walked a mile for them? Don't wait until it's too late. Don't wait until someone walks on bleeding feet just to prove they love you. Make that call today. Show up. Because one day you'll wish you had one more chance to say, "I love you, I remember." If this story touched your heart, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. Click that video on your screen to watch another story that'll change how you see love and family. Your Martha is waiting. Don't make them walk alone.